see there. Let's get down to the root of Buddhism. Christian.
Buddhism was founded by Prince Siddhartha. He was born in New Nepal, right outside of India. No one really knows the exact timeline of when he was born or when he died.
Yeah. Prince Siddhartha lived a life of wealth and luxury until he turned 29, and then he saw the outside world for the first time. There he was exposed to sickness, death, and ascetic, and he got scared, so he decided he had to escape such things. Then he left his family and fortune and left for enlightenment, search for enlightenment.
In Siddhartha's enlightenment, he was sitting underneath a fig tree known as the Bodhi tree. A story underneath the Bodhi tree was when he got attacked by a demon named Mara. Mara means destruction. The demon actually wasn't able to touch him because he was meditating at the time.
After Prince Siddhartha found enlightenment, he decided to teach others about finding enlightenment and meditation. There he made a small community to search for enlightenment, and there the members of the community called him Buddha. Those who followed the Buddhist path were expected to find enlightenment. Those who found enlightenment were relieved from greed and hatred. At the age of 35, Prince Siddhartha started a small community where they were searching for enlightenment, and the members of the community called him the Buddha.
The Buddha states that he can only teach one thing, suffering and end of suffering.
Wait! Aren't you forgetting something? Follow me.
Buddhism has two sects. This is the Theravada and the Mahayana. These sections of Buddhism believe in different things. First, I'll talk about the Theravada. It is prominent in Southeast Asia, mostly Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. They believe in the teaching of analysis, and which means they believe in the teaching from personal experiences instead of believing in a blind faith. Next, I'll talk about the Mahayana. It is developed from the Theravada. It is prominent in North Asia and has lots of texts and studies. It also believes strongly in compassion.
Zen Buddhism is a combination of two other religions, Mahayana Buddhism and Taoism. The word Zen comes from the Chinese word Chan, which loosely translates to meditation. Like the etymology of the name suggests, Zen Buddhism originated in China about 15 centuries ago. From China, it spread to Vietnam, Korea, and Japan, where it is most popular today. Credited with the founding of Buddhism, Zen Buddhism that is the sage Bodhidharma. He said that Zen cannot be explained. It must be experienced. Here's something that he said. All beings by nature are Buddhas.
What are you guys doing?
Oh, we're following the great ways of Prince Siddhartha, the Buddha.
Key figures.
Ananda, the Buddha's cousin and one of his primary disciples, he memorized and recited the Buddha's teaching. This loving attention for 25 years consisted of the following services. Ananda brought water for washing to the Buddha and toothwood. He arranged his seat, washed his feet, massaged his back, fanned him for coolness, swept his cell, and mended his robes.
Siddhartha Gautama, aka the Buddha. He was the founder of Buddhism, the legend of the Buddha. The Queen Mayan dreamt of a white elephant entering her womb through the right side painlessly, and the king and his men concluded that she was pregnant. She in fact was. On her way to her parents' house, where she planned to have the baby, she gave birth to Siddhartha Gautama. The king was told that his son would either become emperor or renounce the throne.
Dalai Lama, the leader of the Tibetan Buddhism. The current Dalai Lama is Tenzin Gyatso. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989 and is also well known for his lifelong advocacy for the Tibetans inside and outside of Tibet. He was formally recognized as the 14th Dalai Lama on November 17, 1950, at the age of 15.
The rituals and practices of the Buddhist culture were used to help people achieve enlightenment. Refuge is one of the most significant rituals. It connects people to Dharma.
The practice of meditation is central to nearly all forms of Buddhism.
Meditation is the central focus of Zen Buddhism and the only way to liberate the Nirvana Buddhism.
Hello. Today we are going to teach you some simple meditation skills. Please take a moment to find a quiet spot on the floor and sit with your legs crossed. Posture is important. You want to make sure that you are comfortable. Now, close your eyes. Relax. Breathe in through your nose. And exhale. Make sure you breathe through your diaphragm, releasing stress.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Daily Show with Bob and Martha.
We have been getting a request by our viewers to cover the spread of Buddhism and the afterlife of Buddhism. We will start by taking it over with our excellent reporters Otis and Harvey, and then we will end by showing a clip of the newly released film Enlightenment.
Now let's have our reporters Otis and Harvey take it away. Over to Otis and Harvey.
Siddhartha Gautama founded Buddhism on the banks of the Ganges in the 4th century BC. From there, it spread across Asia over the next 1,000 years.
The reason Buddhism spread was because the merchants went along the Silk Roads and they helped spread the religion. The reason they didn't spread Hinduism was because they were very low on the caste system and they didn't like Hinduism for that reason. Also, because they had money, they could pay for the monasteries, which helped Buddhism. Because it was a nice dry place, people would sleep there, they could stay there as they went along on their long journeys through the Silk Roads, and
over the next 100 years after Buddhism was founded, it's first spread north to the Kashmir, and then south to Sri Lanka and southern India. And then, around 200 AD, it split into two sects. The Theravada sect, which spread from Sri Lanka to Southeast Asia and Indonesia, and the Mahayana sect, which spread throughout East Asia and Central Asia. And so the Mahayana sect by 500 AD had spread to Buddhism's eastern extreme of Japan. And by that time, almost all of Asia was under Buddhism's sphere of influence. But today, Buddhism has almost completely disappeared from India. There's only 0.8% of the population there that is still Buddhist. But they hold quite a strong majority in Sri Lanka, and an overwhelming majority in many Southeast Asian countries such as Laos and Cambodia. And Buddhism has survived secular revolutions in China, Japan, and South Korea to still remain a very large religion there.
Thank you, Otis and Harvey. What a great job.
Now let's show in the newly released clip Enlightenment.
Daughter, I am ready to die.
No, Father, don't leave me.
No, daughter. I must. I have completed samsara, the cycle of life. I have been born, reached old age, illness, and now I must face death.
time for your rebirth. You should have tried harder to achieve nirvana, so you wouldn't have to die and not have been reborn into the evils of the world. Since life is suffering, I don't want you to have to live again. Being dead permanently is more desirable.
Maybe we'll meet in my next life. Daughter, I'm just glad to know that I will not be reborn into a different body. I will not be born as a rock, tree, cat, or anything other than my body. Remember, reach enlightenment, or in your case, since you're a woman, awakening. Goodbye.
No!
Wow, looks like a great movie. Just to clarify to our watchers, nirvana, or enlightenment, is a virtually indescribable state in which identity is distinguished along with all greed, hatred, and delusion. When the life, if necessary, suffering finally ends, the enlightened person will experience an overwhelming state of serenity, as well as loving kindness or compassion for all human beings.
That's right, Bob. Since the Buddhist teachings believe that life is suffering, being reborn into an evil and suffering life is not desirable. Therefore, reaching nirvana, or in women's case awakening, is the only way to not be born again and be dead.
Canon is described by the Theravada as the word of Buddha. Pali Canon is the most complete early Buddhist canon. Pali Canon falls into three categories: the Vijnana Pitaka, dealing with the rules for monks and nuns; the Sutta Pitaka, words ascribed to Buddha; and the Abhidhamma Pitaka, which is variously seen as psychology, philosophy, and metaphysics. The Jataka are native literature volumes about the early births of Buddha, both human and animal forms. Most of the Jataka stories show Buddha as a god, king, outcast, or an animal. In Theravada Buddhism, the Jatakas are a part of the Pali Canon.
In Tibetan Buddhism, an important text is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This book is about faith as one dies, all the opportunities for faith as one dies, and the 49 days after death it takes to reincarnate. This book is often read to the recently deceased so they can understand their experiences and gain enlightenment, or at least a positive reincarnation. Sects pick and choose. All recognize the Pali Canon as important, and Tibetan Buddhism also practices the sutras as they are a derivative of Mahayana. However, not all sects use texts. Zen is famous for being an illiterate religion. They believe texts and scripture are not important for being able to cross the river or gain enlightenment.
This is the Wheel of Existence, or Bhavacakra. It was designed by Buddha himself to help explain Buddhist teachings to ordinary people. It represents the entire cycle of existence that Buddhists believe we are trapped in. In the very center is a bird, a snake, and an ox. They symbolize the three poisons of ignorance, aversion, and attachment. On the second layer, it is split into two halves. One is white and one is black. They represent karma. The third layer is split into 6 sections. They represent the 6 realms of samsara. Samsara is the repeating cycle that Buddhists believe humans are trapped in. It is birth to death and then repeat forever. The fourth layer is the 12 links of dependent origination. They describe the origins of suffering and ignorance. The fierce creature holding the wheel represents impertinence and everything that is constantly changing in the world. The moon above and to the left of the wheel represents liberation from samsara, or the cyclistic existence. Lastly is the Buddha pointing towards the wheel. He represents that liberation is possible.
The Buddhist culture has 8 auspicious symbols, which can commonly be found in Hinduism. These 8 symbols include the conch shell, representing the thoughts of the Buddha; a lotus flower, which represented purity and enlightenment; the wheel represented knowledge; while the parasol, or umbrella, represented the crown and protection of all elements. An endless knot would represent eternal harmony. A golden fish would represent happiness and fertility. The victory banner was not really a banner, but a small tower that represented any battle that had been won. And lastly, a treasure vase would represent inexhaustible treasure and wealth.
Along with all the symbols, there are physical things that go along with Buddhism. One of the main ones is prayer beads, or mala. Mala are used to count the number of times a mantra is said. A mantra is a sound or phrase, usually starting with Om or Aum. They are used for transformation. Traditional malas are 108 beads long. This means there would be 100 repetitions of the mantra with room for error. These malas were made of various types of wood and sometimes shell or ivory.
Hey there, everyone! I'm here to tell you about gods in Buddhism. Let's just walk and talk now. There are two different types of Buddhism. The Theravada beliefs are essentially atheistic in the sense that they don't worship a god. Theravadins mirror the original teachings of the Buddha. Even so, they never directly deny that there might be gods. Hey there, young student.
Excuse me, I'm doing a school project on Buddhism, and I was wondering if you could tell me the purpose of gods in Theravada and the side of Buddhism.
Let me think. Hey! I know just the person to answer that question. I'll be there in a jiffy!
To answer your question, young lady, in Theravada, the Buddha is portrayed as an extremely wise teacher, an example to his followers. His purpose is to be a role model, but not a god.
Purpose of gods in Mahayana. Which is more religious of the two sides? Is it any different?
The purpose is different between the two. In Mahayana, the universe is populated by celestial Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are worshipped as gods and goddesses. Historical Buddha is also honored by worship, but the other Mahayana Buddhist gods are adapted from the cultures Buddhism has encountered while developing, from the pantheon of Hinduism to the indigenous religions of Tibet, China, and Thailand.
So interesting! Do you by chance know the powers of God in Mahayana?
Mahayana Buddhists hope to become bodhisattvas, or saints who have become enlightened, but who also unselfishly delay nirvana to help others attain it as well. Mahayana Buddhists teach that enlightenment can be attained in a single lifetime.
This is going to be the best school project ever!
Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
The purpose is different between the two. In Mahayana...
Simon! This is too... Excuse me, I'm doing a school project on Buddhism.
Let me think.